All right, Jeffrey Cranford, we've started this discussion about nostalgia. And I have thought about something as we've been talking about this. And it is that I have never seen a tour player go backwards in technology.
That's true.
You know, I mean,
That's true.
If somebody showed up on tour today and said, you know, I really want to hit one of these.
Yeah, it wouldn't work.
No, and a tour player is always asking the manufacturer, what do you got? What's out there now? They always want to know.
I know you've got the Pro V1X, but do you have the Gutta Percha? I mean, nobody rarely hears that.
Nobody does that. And there's a reason for that, and that it's that they would be placed at a crippling disadvantage.
Absolutely.
And that's where we left off last time, is that there is something about this idea of nostalgia, of getting caught up in nostalgia, that can be very crippling to us.
Can be incredibly crippling.
And the Bible warns about that.
I got a great story about that. A good friend of us in our ministry, he was on the faculty, on the staff of a major seminary on the East Coast. Early on in his career, he was 30 years old. It was his 30th birthday. He was in Houston. He was sitting there listening to the jukebox by himself, kind of bemoaning his situation. He's been called to start a new church, and you know, things don't always go perfectly when you're involved in kingdom stuff, at least from our perspective. And all of a sudden a song came on, and he didn't know what song it was, but this wave of nostalgia came over him as he described it. And it just was talking about the drugstore and the movie house, and and everything reminded him of his small Mississippi town where he grew up. And so he made his way over to the jukebox and needed to find out who it was. It was a Kenny Rogers song, and I think it was called 20 Years Ago or 20 Years Later or something. And he said, I've got to get that. So he wrote it down, went and found, was going to buy the cassette and everything, bought the cassette, and was looking at who wrote it. And unbelievably, he found out that Billy Tyler wrote this song, and Billy Tyler's mom was his grade school teacher in this small Mississippi town. Billy Tyler was writing about his very town, and
this friend's very
town where he grew up. And so that song was not only nostalgically taking him back to his town, actually the guy that was writing about his hometown, the small Mississippi town.
Wow.
Well, you can see the crippling aspect of that. He could all of a sudden, the smells, and playing the second hole down his club and smelling the Coppertone over by the pool, and when things were so great back when we were, and he had this strong desire to leave his calling and go back home where things were maybe a little more safe, maybe could have worked for his dad, or all different things were available to him, his old friends, his old place, his old stomping ground, his homeland. And in fact, if you think about that word, it was actually, I did a little research on the word nostalgia, and it was actually coined by a 17th century medical student who was trying to describe the anxiety that was being produced in a lot of these French mercenaries as they would go away and fight off their homeland, and then they were experiencing this incredible anxiety. And he took a Greek compound, one word from the Greek meaning homeland, and another word meaning an ache or a pain, and he coined this term nostalgia from these two Greek words. And it's kind of stuck. Now, we think about that as being, isn't it great? I smell something, or I hear a song. I mean, you go to the radio and it's the 50s or the 60s or the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, songs that you listen to depending on when you grew up. And it can take you back to a moment in time, and it can pull you out of the present, and certainly from with a view to the future, and take you back emotionally to a place in the past where we have selective memory, thinking only of the good times. And it can be crippling for our calling. Listen to what Paul says in Philippians chapter 3. Many of you will know this verse, but in light of nostalgia, listen to what he says. Now, he had a great reason to think, boy, things were better when I was really highly regarded. He studied under Gamaliel. He was part of the Pharisaical group, the sect of Judaism. He was highly thought of, had a high position, and now he's kind of on the run. Being thrown outside cities for dead. He's been stoned, shipwrecked. Here's his life. And even in spite of that, he encourages the church at Philippi in Philippians chapter 3 to say, listen, he says, more than that, I count all things to be lost in view of the surpassing value of knowing Jesus, my Lord. for whom I've suffered the loss of all things and count them but rubbish in order that I may gain Christ and may be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own derived from the law, but that which is through faith in Christ, a righteousness which comes through God on the basis of faith. And then catch this, verse 10, that I may know him, the power of his resurrection, the fellowship of his sufferings, being conformed to his death, in order that I may attain to the resurrection from the dead. Not that I have already obtained it. This is so powerful, especially for, I think, a lot of us that struggle with this nostalgia that comes over us, or have become perfect, but I press on in order that I may lay hold of that for which I was laid hold of by Christ. I don't regard myself as having laid hold of it yet, but I forget what lies behind and press on toward the upward call of God in Jesus. So this upward call, God has an upward call, and that upward call always resides currently in the present and in the future. So there's an upward call. There's a hopefulness. There's a regard for what God can do, what he will do, what he's done in the past, what he has said he would do in the past, all building faith to not be drugged down by nostalgic feelings to draw us away from our calling and into the past, but forget what lies behind. Whether it be a wonderful memory, or for some of you it might even be a negative memory or horrors that have happened in your past. We've got to lay that down, forget it, and really focus on this upward call of God in Christ. And so in that sense, it can be crippling, it can be devastating to get enraptured in these old thoughts. Nothing wrong with thinking about the past occasionally, but if they take you out of the present and with a hope for the future and pull you into the good old days, the grumpy old man scenario, the Walter Matthau, Jack Lemmon Grumpy Old Man series I think they had on the cinema a number of years back, pulls you into the past, you limit what your future holds.
There's a lot to talk about there. We've gone quite a ways down the line here, but let's capture some more when we come back next time.